So what if you limit your sampling time to a very small amount? In old samplers like the Akai MPC 60 or the EMU SP 1200, you had a couple of seconds of sampling time. So you had to be very creative in what kind of samples you use and how you use them. So what if we limit the sampling time to only 1 second? In this video, I will go through some experiments that I made where I limited the sampling time to only 1 second. So what does this mean? In the beats that I'm going to play for you and also Deconstruct in Ableton, all the sounds together only take up 1 second in total. And I put this limitation on myself because I wanted to challenge and to see if it is possible to use a couple of different samples, but all very short. And since you can chop them very precisely in Ableton, you can see it on the timeline, I thought it would be possible to set this very unrealistic limitation and see how far we can get with it. So I created 5 different beats. I will play them now one by one, and then we're gonna deconstruct one of them in Ableton to show, so I can show you which samples I used and how I made that beat. All right, starting with the first one. It's 120 BPM and it sounds like this. Beat number 2, 130 BPM. All the sounds you hear combined, all the source samples combined only take up 1 second. Of course, this doesn't mean that you can't loop stuff or you can't create instruments in sampler from like a single note. On to experiment number 3, a bit slower now, 90 BPM. And of course, these are just beats, they're not full tracks. There's definitely room to improve them and to create more variation and more interesting progression of the track, but as a starting point, right? Then going to something much faster at 144 BPM. And then to the last example, 107 BPM, and this track will also deconstruct in Ableton after this. So first the beat. So one thing you might have noticed about these beats is that it's they all have drums, at least a kick, a snare, a hi-hat, some kind of bass sound and melody, and then often some kind of sound effect. So that's kind of the basic kind of structure of all these beats. Let's go into Ableton now and let's look at the session of the last one. Here in Ableton, I have the last one that you heard open at 107 BPM. Here you can see all the tracks. It starts from track 11 through 17, so 7 tracks. But let's first look at the samples. So the samples I have here on the first few tracks. And as you can see, I put a marker here where it's 1 second. So let me zoom in more. As you can see on the timeline here, it goes from 0 to 1 second. And these are the samples. So if I play them in sequence, it's very fast. I'll play them one by one. So the first one is a bass note from the operator synth. So I created a C2 and it's the subsine preset. So it's like a sub bass. So this is the sound. Very short. Then the kick. I believe this is from the standard Ableton pack. I trimmed it. Then a 99 clap. Trimmed it as well. A shaker. And then I used a drift synthesizer to create some kind of melodic note. And it's played in C4, so also basically an octave higher than what I wanted to play. It was very sort of metallic sounding sound. And then the last one is just some noise from the drift synthesizer. So I turn off the oscillators and turn up the noise. So very basic, but that can be like an effect, or you can make it into a hi-hat or a shaker. As you can see, I managed to squeeze in 6 different samples into 1 second. So 3 percussion samples and 3 synth sounds, or 2 synth sounds and a white noise sound from a synthesizer. And already when you hear these sounds, you kind of imagine that you can make music from that. So it doesn't feel very unreasonable to put these sounds into 1 second. Of course, you need to visually chop this. If you would do this on the actual old hardware, it would be very difficult to squeeze it into 1 second because you have to chop it very precisely. All right, so we have these sounds. Let's now look at the actual track. Let me mute this. Let's start with the first track. That is the kick drum. So it's very basic, just 4 to the floor. I made it mono and I put a pedal on it with some distortion. So without the distortion, just to give it a bit more presence in the mix. Then on top of that, the 99 clap. And I put a low cut EQ and some reverb on that. And the reverb is really to make it longer, because I kind of cut off the tail to make it fit in the 1 second. And now add the reverb to make it a bit longer again. And I also created another track with the same clap at a lower volume as a kind of extra claps at the end of the 4th bar. Then the shaker on the 4th track. Here I changed the volume of some of the shakers, that's why they have different colors. But for the rest it's just a low cut EQ. And especially with percussion sounds like hi-hats and shakers or kind of little ticks and bits and bobs, you can really have short sound. So if I really wanted to, I could have maybe squeezed in 2 hi-hats instead of 1 shaker, or 2 kinds of percussion sounds. So. And then on to the first melodic instrument, that is the bass. So I put the sample into a sampler, put the loop on to create a longer note. So when I play a C2, which was the original pitch, so when I turn off the effects, you hear the click. Then I made it mono. I put a bass smasher on it. It's a raw preset. So when you go to audio effects, raw, the overdrive plug effect from Ableton, I just changed the dry wet a little bit. And then I played in C2 these notes. Very basic. Then on to the next track, which is another sampler with the synth note. This sound. And there I put the Echo Flex preset from the Echo device on. And a low cut EQ. And that's the basic part of the beat. So it's very simple, but it's all made from those samples. So that's kind of the cool thing. Then in order to create a variation, I created a different version of the bass. And I also used the 6th sample, which is the white noise from the drift synthesizer with a low cut and an auto pan, just to create a bit more something different in the sort of break part of the beat. So let me play that. So as you can hear, the bass goes like kind of stuttery. And the white noise sounds like this. So yeah, that's basically the idea, to limit yourself to a very short amount of sampling time. And of course, it doesn't have to be 1 second. You can easily do 2 seconds, 3, 4, 5 seconds. It's still a very short time. And then build something. And the good thing is that you really have to be thoughtful about how many samples you want to use and which ones. And also, can you reuse like one sample for multiple parts of the song? And perhaps this is more a technique to start something, so you don't overthink and you limit yourself. And then once you have something going, like one of these beats that I have now, then to open up and say like, okay, from now on I can add anything. I can have infinite amount of sample time, or I can add more MIDI instruments. So it's more a way to get you started and then to have the goal to only make music in 1 second sampling time. Let me know if you're going to try this, and let me know what the results are in the comments. Hopefully this was inspiring. Keep making music. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.